In Batman number 159, the Batman is forced to make a grim choice. Can he save the Joker and not make an enemy of the Bat family's worst killer, the Red Hood? Let's find out in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. After reading through Batman number 159, I think overall I like it better than 158. There's more drama, a little bit more of interesting developments, and a little bit more clarity about where the story is headed. That said, the story isn't going to blow you away. There are some great moments of dramatic tension, which is good, especially between Batman and Red Hood, but a lot of the issue is taken up with rehashes and montages of Batman history, things that we already know. It feels very safe, but it's not quite clear whether or not Jeff Loeb, who's the writer, is playing it safe on purpose because he's got something big planned, or if he's just going through the motions. Let's break it down. Let's talk about the pros and cons, starting with what's great about Batman number 159. First things first, you got to give credit to Jeff Loeb, who puts Batman in this moral dilemma. He's now forced to save the worst of the worst, the Joker. And by doing so, he puts himself at odds with not only with the criminals of Gotham City, but also his allies and the Bat family. And that's a big positive. Plus, you've got Red Hood showing up, and there's a lot of back history there between Red Hood and Joker, so that adds to the dramatic tension. And then you do get a small cameo of the Riddler, who, let's be honest, looks like he's been working out a lot. He's pretty big and beefy in this issue, which is a little bit odd, but I'm interested to see where it goes. Overall, it's a solid Bat family drama story that does lean a lot on the grit and the moral dilemma of the decisions that Batman is forced to make. So what's not great about Batman number 159? First and foremost, the script is good, I would say serviceable, and maybe even okay, but it's not great. It's not going to blow you away. It feels very vanilla, feels very safe, and it just feels like Jeff Loeb is kind of giving you all the tick boxes of what you'd expect in a dramatic, tense Batman story without really giving you anything that's going to surprise you. Jeff Loeb's been around forever, so for somebody with this pedigree of accomplishments, you'd think you'd get something a little bit more full of pizzazz and some wow moments, but you're really not getting that here. The second issue you run into is that even with the lack of surprise, that you get a lot of rehash. The first half to third of the issue is intermixed with montages and flashback moments, individual panels, and sometimes entire splash pages that are just rehashing the beginnings of Batman, the crime alley death, some of the famous storylines involving the Joker. It just doesn't really serve any purpose to the story at hand. It just sort of gives you an idea of what's occupying Batman's mind as he considers his history with the Joker. That's nice, but it doesn't really give you anything. And for an arc that's supposed to be all about Hush, basically everything right now is focused on Batman and his relationship with Joker. And even then, the material is not that original. And I'm going to add a last point in here, which is really just, I would say, a sneaking suspicion or cause for concern. I'm not exactly what you would call it. The way the story is being structured and the way it's progressing and the way Jeff Loeb is laying out the scripts, everything is focused on Batman and Joker. You're really not getting Hush. He's not appeared once. He's mentioned verbally, but that's about it. I get a sneaking suspicion, and maybe I'm wrong, that this isn't a Hush story and that maybe Hush might be a presence or even a red herring or maybe even a bait and switch. I'm not saying that's happening, but my spidey senses are tingling that something weird is going on here. Now, if I'm wrong, and I'll admit it in the next review. But if I am right, this could be another Batcat wedding debacle, and I don't think DC is prepared to go through another one of those problems right now. All right, let's switch gears and talk about the art. Surprise, 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 Jim Lee's art looks amazing. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by that, and especially if you are a Jim Lee fan, you're going to get exactly what you expect. If you're not a Jim Lee fan, this issue is probably good enough to make you one. Jim Lee just has a great eye for powerfully framed characters, lots of detail, fantastic use of lines to create contours and power and strength. Everything looks quintessentially superheroic. Even there's a brief action scene, and it's not much, but there is a brief action scene, looks pretty darn good. Lee is one of those few artists who came from his famous era, which was in the late 80s, early 90s, and his work still holds up. His original work holds up, his art today holds up. If you think that they brought Jim Lee back just for the nostalgia factor, you got it wrong. Modern artists should be looking at how Jim Lee does his work, and you'd be foolish not to follow his example. Alright, if you're still hanging in, let's recap what happened in the last issue, which is Batman number 158. Batman swings into action, interrupting the Joker during a sort of a redo or a rehash of one of his original crimes, which is dumping Jokerized fish into the Gotham reservoir. Joker gets the jump on Batman and dumps him into the river, but Joker was jumped by this muscle-bound enforcer sent to capture him. Batman was fished out of the water by Talia al Ghul. Joker was tortured by this unseen villain, and the Bat family went dark when Batman later determined the comms network that they use has been compromised. The issue ended with Batman tracking Joker to an abandoned carnival, where he somehow concluded Hush was the person who had Joker kidnapped and tortured. And that brings us to the current issue in Batman 159. Batman does the only thing he can do. He takes the Joker to the one person who is going to give Joker aid without exposing him to press and the police and everybody else, Dr. Leslie Tompkins. Despite her lack of resources and advanced surgical skills, she manages to patch Joker up, reset his jaw, wire it shut, and tell him, hey, you got to get him out of here to someplace he can rest. Batman doesn't have anywhere to go, so of course the only place left is the Batcave. Later on, Batman uses the advanced equipment he has in the Batcave to examine Joker while the villain is still in a coma. Suddenly, Red Hood arrives, jumps Batman and says, how dare you? How could you bring him in here? How could you help him? How could you save him? That results, of course, in a fight. They get into fisticuffs, spills out all over the Batcave, but at the end, Red Hood wins and knocks Batman out. On the other side of town, Batgirl and Nightwing are talking within the clock tower, and they discuss their options when they're visited by the one and the only Riddler, who somehow mysteriously seems to know everything that's going on. He's got a snazzy new outfit, and he looks like he's definitely been hitting the gym hard. The issue ends when Batman wakes up and finds Red Hood is gone, the Batmobile's gone, and so is the Joker. Somehow, through all of that chaos and fighting, Batman deduces that Red Hood is working for Hush. Final thoughts, what do we think about Batman number 159 from DC Comics? You get a lot more interpersonal drama, definitely cranks up the tension, and Batman is put into this impossible moral corner that puts him at odds with basically everybody, friend and foe. Jeff Loeb's script is, I would say, serviceable, but it's got high tension and high drama, so there is something there to be engaging for you. But the script is also short on surprises, and there's no Hush to be found. On top of that, Jim Lee's art, of course, is masterful and fantastic. So if you're going to pick up this arc, do so for the art, but if you're waiting to be surprised by the story, you're going to be waiting a lot longer. Therefore, Batman number 159 from DC Comics earns a 6.5 out of 10. If you thought this review was helpful, leave a thumbs up down below. We'd appreciate it. And also leave me a comment with your expectation for what you think the next writer, who's going to be the ongoing writer, should be doing with this title. It's going to be Matt Fraction, who may be familiar to folks who are Marvel fans, but maybe not so much for DC fans. Let me know your thoughts about Matt Fraction, what he needs to do on the title, and what you think is the future of Batman at DC Comics. So thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned through the outro for more reviews just like this one.